Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to myself, Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. We've had some fun setting up. We've had some interlopers from Jack's great business association, the British Growers, hop on. Will's just joined us. We've got Andrew, we've got Beverly, we've got Rick, we've got Jack. Just so that you're aware of who Beanstalk are, we are the social enterprise that supports, educates and promotes the global fresh food sector to help it thrive and grow faster. I think we're on either now our fifth or sixth webcast on this basis, and we're accelerating in the respective numbers that we're getting and the breadth of number of people that are watching them on both the UK and an international basis. So a big thank you goes out to all of you guys who are viewing, but also to all of our sponsors who I will name today, being Red Fox. So if you're looking at anyone on a recruitment perspective, give the guys at Red Fox a ring. Green Cell and Westphalia. Westphalia is just an amazing global avocado business with other strings to them on a fresh produce perspective. And Green Cell is the sister company within the UK and one of the biggest suppliers of avocados into the retail sector. Kantar, if you need to know anything about data within food, you need to speak to Joe and his team. Blue Skies, based in Northamptonshire, but with sites in Ghana, Benin, Egypt, South Africa, and always forget about Brazil, growing and making some of the most amazing tropical produce to be supplied back into the UK and the European retailers. Vinafresh, a new kid on the block, Terry, that's what you are, a new kid on the block. They're now 12 years old, but really ramping up the relationship with retailers and food service alike, and one to watch for the future. AC Gotham, if you don't know them already, one of the best fruit growers in the whole of the UK, predominantly Kent based. And finally, but not last, we have G's. Beverly, do you know anything about G's?
Some bits and bobs, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So G's is a £500 million fresh produce company with its heritage very firmly set within the UK, but with sites, and help me here, Beverly, within Spain, within Senegal, because I've been there, and don't forget the States. Did you say the States?
I said the States, yeah.
Excellent.
Did you say you visited the farm in Senegal?
Yeah, West Africa Farms and Robin and all the gang there, and an amazing experience. So, guys, we've got a quite an interesting, if not emotive, topic to talk through for today. But just so everyone dial in and gets a bit of a better understanding as to who you are, can you just say your name, say which company or organisation you're with, and where you are sat under isolation at the moment? Jack, let's start with you, please. Let's have your full name and who you are.
Hi Max, and welcome everybody to this session. My name is Jack Ward and I'm the Chief Executive of an organisation called the British Growers Association, and we are an association of associations. So we work very closely with about 25 different organisations spread across the fresh produce industry, and we provide a whole range of services, administration, accountancy services, which enable these organisations to operate. And we also provide advocacy on behalf of the fresh produce industry, which at the moment is particularly important.
Well said.
In terms of where I'm sat at the moment, I'm sat in the glorious village of Water-Newton on the banks of the River Nene.
Fantastic. Well done. Rick, over to you, sir.
Again, thanks for welcoming me on here, Max, to interlope with some real experts. I'm Rick Sanderson, Chief Commercial Officer of a business called Quadex Group. We offer IT solutions to the food industry, mapping compliance, supply chains, certification, modern slavery, you name it, we're mapping it. But I've been 25 years in food, 43 years eating it, as you can tell. I seem to go up a stone a year. So anyway, yeah, so that's me. And currently I'm sat in my garage, which by good fortune I turned into an office in the summer. So been a good look there. And I live in Bedford.
Excellent, well done. Will, where are you and who are you?
Hi guys, nice to meet you. Sorry I was a bit late. My name is Will. I'm the CEO of FruPro. FruPro is a very new venture that we set up literally beginning of this year. The idea came to us. Originally, I'm from the wholesale markets. I'm from a family business. I'm the fifth generation of that family business. So that's WT Hills, and we set up FruPro this year. FruPro has been aiding with the food surplus situation, especially non-retail sectors, picking up, surplus product from service providers, taking it to wholesale market, getting a resale value, and also working with a couple of food banks like FareShare. So yeah, that's us.
Well done, thank you. Will, I just cut across you. Just say that last line again.
I'm in Apsley in Hertfordshire, just the other side.
Lovely area. Beverly, who are you and where are you?
So I'm the Group HR Director at Jeeves. I'm currently sitting in an office on the farm in the Fens near Barway, near Ely. And I suppose some of the interesting things, we employ 8,000 people worldwide, but in the UK there'll be almost 4,000 people at peak this summer. And just a couple of other stats, we'll be harvesting 250 million heads of lettuce and celery this summer if we get the people to pick them.
Wow. Okay. Well done. When we had Dan Hewitt on earlier in the week from Kettle, we had some questions from some of the kids as to how many potatoes he was handling as a business, and you've already answered that for us in respect of G's. And then coming over to Andrew. Andrew, you shouldn't really be here in a normal world when we ever get back to that. You should actually be somewhere else. Where should you have been today, please?
I should be climbing mountains in northeast Greenland, climbing mountains that have never been climbed by mankind. But unfortunately, I'm not.
And just to let everyone else into a bit of a secret, because we had a bit of a laugh about it whilst we were getting warmed up. It was Andrew's birthday yesterday, so many happy returns, Andrew, for your 21st yesterday.
Thank you very much. 21st, I wish.
And Andrew, we all know who you are, but there's a lot of students and overseas visitors dialed into this. So could you just tell everyone about a little bit about your business, please?
Yes, I'm Andrew Burgess. I'm one of the brothers who owns Produce World. We have two divisions, a conventional and an organic one. We are farmers, growers and packers and distributors of vegetables, predominantly potatoes, carrots, parsnips, onions, leeks. We supply every single retailer.
Well done. Very impressive. Very impressive business, and the three brothers are great. I didn't mention it when we had William on. Was it last Friday? I think one of the best things I've seen of you guys lately was at the FPJ live event in 2018, where the three of you came up on stage. And I don't want to say a threesome because that'd be wrong, but you bounced off each other really well in that conference. I think we got a lot out of you, and it's great that we've managed to have William on, now you, and at some point we better bring brother Jason in so he doesn't feel left out.
We like to have a sense of humour, and Jason holds us all to account with his extremely difficult to answer questions. So keep quiet, please, Jason. I don't want any questions from you.
Yeah, I think they're already in. So guys, let's get into this. So the title that we set up is Salads, Veg, Supply Chain Dynamics, Labour Issues, Food Waste. We cover it all. I didn't want to start off on a depressive note, but knowing that this is videoed, I think it's going to be quite interesting for us. Or we've got a lot of students now from the likes of Harper, Newcastle, Cirencester, Bristol dialing in, looking at these. I think it's quite good actually to date stamp this in respect of where we are in this whole COVID-19 scenario. I was speaking to a couple of contacts this morning, and we all did the same thing. And I don't know about you guys. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock this morning, we all woke up, and the first thing that we did was check our phones and just be blunt about it to make sure that Boris Johnson was still with us. And you just cannot believe what has happened in the week in politics, let alone with the situation with COVID-19. I've been speaking to a lot of people, especially over the weekend, on an economic perspective, and it's fascinating where we are going. There seems to be, and our media, they seem to be very short-sighted in respect to the news that they're reporting, and perhaps we have to go to the slightly more esteemed publications, newspapers, to see what the longer-term outlook is like. And the reason I'm mentioning that, there's a big worry building about Joe Public and their finances. The bulk of UK households don't have £1,000 tucked away for a rainy day, and by God, we're in a rainy day situation now. So they don't have that money. There's been all of this panic buying. So they've gone into store and bought this surplus, the food products or toilet roll to see them through what they think is going to be a worst case scenario. They've either used up their cash reserves and they've filled it up on credit cards. We've now got the situation that a number of them have been furloughed or made redundant, and huge numbers of people have looked to gain the 3-month mortgage holidays. So that there's a potential train crash going to happen 3-4 months down the line, that as people then have to come and look to pay their mortgages, but they have no money, they have no job, or they've been furloughed, and they've got no money to buy food. And in the meantime, we've got this oddity that I've talked with you about with some of you already, that we've got huge amounts of food waste potentially building up, and that's why one of the reasons why we wanted to get Will on board. So we've got the likes of the potato industry, who cannot export to Ireland for the fish and chip market because fish and chip shops aren't open. We've got some very big seed and frozen veg companies who can't authorise growers to grow a contract for them. We'll come on to Jack a little bit later on that. And there's a lot of product already about that hasn't got a home and on a veg basis that potentially is going to get dumped. We've got the meat sector. Andrew and I were talking earlier about how the meat sector is in rapid decline because we're not buying the high-end pieces of meat. We're just after mince, and so the high-end elements aren't going anywhere, and everyone's running out of storage. And we've also got some retailers who we won't name who look to be, for the wrong or right situation, seem to be pulling on Eastern European supplies of product rather than using British based beef. And I've got dairy farmer contacts who are pouring milk away because the food service sector has got no home for it. And this has also been duplicated in the likes of the States. So we've got this oddity that in 3 to 4 months' time, people won't have any money to buy food, but we're throwing away food. And we've also then got the issue that Beverly intimated earlier, that we've got a labour issue that we were slightly alarmist in one of the previous webcasts that we thought by this week that the UK borders would have already been closed, and everyone in the UK would therefore be the people that would pick the UK crop. But in effect, we're there because no one can travel around. So at this point in time, we seem to be in this dire situation, not helped by the economists saying that the UK economy is tanked. That was a quote from an economist on the Ready for Today programme. But as we said before, people have to do one or two things in a world war or a world recession, depression. They have to eat and they have to clean. So we're very fortuitous that in the sector that we're in, we are here to feed people. And it looks highly likely that, especially in a retail perspective, the retailers are going to slim down their offering and get down to the core lines. So everyone here on this panel is definitely involved in those core lines. So it's how they get through the situation and survive to prosper. So let's start off with, if it's okay with you, Will, just with this huge amount of waste that is potentially going to come through the system. What's your views on that? And with the technology that you've developed, what can you do to make a difference so that potentially people in 3-4 months' time can be fed? What's your views, please?
Yeah, well, as I say, the 3 or 4 months' time is quite difficult to judge. With it being fresh produce, it's very reactive. So we have to, we all know it's got a shelf life. This is perishable items. So, but right here, right now, where we've been concentrating most efforts on is food service companies. Food service companies like Reynolds, for an example, they've been quite a big user on the FruPro platform, and of course, they service a lot of the hospitality sector. And it was quite a sudden that shut, and that marketplace was taken away. And of course, places like Reynolds and people like that, they have programs with growers, and the produce keeps arriving. So what we did is we set up our network to contact all wholesalers across the UK for them to get in contact and say, look, we can take this, we can take, some are taking lettuce, some are taking berries, some citrus, and it's moving back into the food chain quite effectively at the moment because the wholesale markets are all still open, and huge amounts of their business is now dedicated to the fruit boxes, so the home delivery systems that independent retailers are adopting, which is great. But how that affects 3 or 4 months down the line, it's very difficult to tell. Will programs stop coming into can they stop these programs that were intended for food service? Again, very difficult to say. Can the wholesale market absorb all of that extra volume and the volumes that these guys have got? Quite a few commodities are, for lime, for an example, there's a lot of lime around at the moment. Lime is, a product that food service really does use, and the bars and restaurants utilise. So, and how much lime can that can that marketplace take? It's difficult, but we're doing what we can to match the right people and hopefully alleviate some of that surplus product.
Well, thank you, Jack. So I started off on a fairly emotive State of the Union because of where we are. What are your views? Do you agree with my thinking, or is it worse, or is it better? On the behalf of the British Growers Association, what's British growers? What are your views, please?
Right. Okay. Let's have a kind of note of realism. We arrived at this situation completely unprecedented. Nobody has ever endured this kind of situation before. I think I wrote last week that it had a few parallels with the foot and mouth situation back in 2001, where we saw parts of the agricultural industry locked down. And I have to say, personally, there are sort of some similarities to the feel of being sort of isolated and unable to go out. I hope that the situation will sort of work out its own level, and we'll find a way of operating under the current difficulties. It's been interesting tracking the whole seasonal labour issue, how that has moved over the past couple of weeks. And actually, we've moved from a situation where we thought it was going to be a complete disaster to a point where actually we've had a terrific response from the public in terms of wanting to get involved. I mean, it very much depends how long this goes on for. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we're in it less time rather than more time, and that we can find an operational level that works, and we can keep the economic damage to an absolute minimum. I absolutely get that there will be casualties as a result of the current situation, but let's try and work to make sure that everybody understands what's going on, and there's a willingness between, particularly in my case, suppliers of fresh produce and retailers of fresh produce, to understand where the stresses and strains are in the system and try and work with them rather than working against them.
Yeah, well said. Andrew, you're the man on the ground. Views, please.
It's difficult looking forward 3 or 4 months, and I think we're probably going to have to look forward longer than that. We dropped off a cliff in terms of the way our food distribution's been working. We've been eating 50% of our food out of the home. All of a sudden, we're eating 100% in the home. That will not revert overnight. That's going to take, even when the restrictions are finished, that's going to take a while for that to get back to normal. There's definitely been winners and losers, as we spoke about earlier, with the beef job, for instance, the milk job. We're in core veg. We've debated at length what to plant this year. Should we plant more? Should we plant less? And we've plumped for planting exactly as planned. So all of our growers' contracts will be honoured. Everything we sell is on tenders anyway. So, volume for us is good. But there will be some losers in this. And it's how the world gets back to normal once the restrictions are coming back. Because it could take a couple of years for us to get back to our full social behaviour. I mean, people are going to be wary of crowded spaces. There's going to be a lot of restaurants that aren't there anymore. It's going to take a while to get back to normal, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, well said. And Rick, with your prestigious food, fresh produce background, and now on an operational supply chain consultancy basis, what's your views as to how this situation can evolve to the benefit of the sectors and the benefit of the public?
Well, I think we've all sort of had discussions in the last few weeks about what the longer term impact of this is. The pebbles being thrown in the water. In theory, and we all hope, there should be some real positives if we're going to be glass half full about this. 14 years ago, I set up my own little box scheme and then tried to encourage people to buy local. Yeah, that's right. If only I still had that business today. But I do think it's pricked the public's conscience. If I take my own street here, we're all getting boxes delivered again. The milkman's coming around the close again. And I think that it's going to create a somewhat more of a reconnect with where food comes from. How food's produced. We're all cooking in our kitchens again with our kids, however badly that may be. So I'm with Andrew. It'll take time for people to trust in food service again and trickle out to the places that are open. But I hope, there's some positives to come out of this. And you may have noticed I've got my little quote here, but they say a week is a long time in politics. Well,
Rick, read it out, please. Read it out.
Well, this was 4 weeks ago. So Dr. Tim Lunig, who is no other than economic advisor to the Chancellor, on the 2nd of March said the food sector isn't critically important to the UK, you'll be pleased to know, and that farming and fishing certainly isn't. And the UK can import all of its food like Singapore. So wind the clock forward 4 weeks. I've not heard from him since, hence my little emoji. I don't know if he's coming across or not. That's my best attempt at an emoji. But you know, let's try and stay positive. I think it's a really tough time. Full credit to everybody on the panel and that's out there trying to keep the wheels moving. It's a really challenging time. But yeah, let's stay positive, I'd say.
Well done, Rick. And Beverly, just going back to what Rick was saying, that 4 weeks ago, we got this Dr. Tim stating that 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, there was all the concern about immigration. Yeah. And now, look where we are. And I'm just looking at two articles in front of me. We've got one, I need to find out where it's from, but this is from April the 6th with Anthony Gardner, Marketing Director at G's, your business, on the scheme that you've set up to try and get local workers into your business. And as Anthony said in this article, we're still not clear from government at the moment if furloughed workers can come in and harvest crops. That's something that we're currently looking for clarity on, and we've had a bit of conflicting advice from different government departments. We're having a slight laugh and joke about it before we went live about the Daily Mail, that I found out this morning from the Daily Mail that furloughed staff now have the right to seek work elsewhere during the shutdown, as long as they have the permission of the main employer and are able to complete any training required of them while stood down. So are you happy in that respect, in this little window, that you've now got the ability to pull on more potential staff workers for the G's group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think overall we've had an astonishing response to our campaign. So we've joined the Food Our Nation campaign, and I think it's been great that people have been really interested in coming to join us. And I think some of that is on the back of the Food Heroes work that the government have put out there.
So Beverly, can we just wind it right the way back? So tell us about that whole campaign, because there's a lot of people, especially internationally, that might not know about it and would love to do something similar in Africa or America. So if you could just walk us through it, that'd be fantastic.
So the situation we were in was all of a sudden, as coronavirus was spreading around Europe, then it was becoming more and more difficult to have the people that usually harvest our salad and vegetables come over to the UK. So they were finding it difficult to move around their own country, whether or not the borders were actually closed or not. So it was looking likely that we'd need to recruit 2/3 of our people from different sources. So we've launched a Feed Our Nation campaign, which is where we're looking to recruit students or people that have been furloughed, because it was confirmed by the government probably 10 days ago now that they could work for other businesses. Or people that have sadly been made redundant. They could all apply to us directly. We'll give them training. They could live in our accommodation if that was something that they wanted, or if they live locally, they could work with us. So we're doing that, as well as working with some of the agencies that we wouldn't normally work with. And those agencies have often supplied labour into businesses like hospitality that have seen a sudden downturn. So that whole campaign is about attracting people to different channels to what we would normally do.
Okay, and that campaign, is that focused just on G's or the food group per se, or the food sector?
The whole food sector. So it goes all the Feed the Nation campaign is all the way from retail right the way through the supply chain. Now, what's particularly focused and is really important, is going to be more important for the next few weeks, is the Pick for Britain campaign, because that's the one that's dedicated to fresh produce. And that's all about harvest, and that will kick off, supported by the NFU, this summer.
Okay, because the bit I get confused of, and we mentioned it on an earlier webcast, there's about 6 websites that have suddenly popped up, either on a philanthropic basis or to capitalise from this situation.
Yeah.
So So do you think, Beverly, that there should just be one global portal for everyone? Probably like you guys. Prior to this, I've had 4 family friends contact me with kids age 18 to 20 who they want to get out into the fields, but they don't know where to go. So,
Yeah.
so to me, it still seems very, very fragmented today. Do you, Jack, know? Do you, Andrew, know? Will this be brought into a single or very, very selective portals?
It's coming. You're absolutely right, and it's overdue. But Jack will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the NFU that's leading this one, and it's going to be a portal with a map, so you'll be able to click if you're an applicant, you'll be able to click on where the farms are that you would like to work.
That's absolutely right. If I can just add in here, Max. Yeah, there's another call at 4 o'clock this afternoon to progress the idea of the Pick for Britain campaign. There was a discussion yesterday afternoon about the Pick for Britain campaign. We've got a website. We're just dealing with the technology. I think one thing that we have to do is just manage expectations here because, as Beverly said, there's been a magnificent response. But I think we have to understand that the season is going to progress from here. We're very much at the start of the fresh produce season. The asparagus season is just getting underway, so obviously there'll be pickers required for that. There's some harvesting of strawberries, but we're not going to get sort of into top gear probably until mid-May, June time. And we just need to make sure that we can sustain that interest in seasonal work over a prolonged period. So work is underway on a website for Pick for Britain. There are various other initiatives out there, as you say, and the idea is just to link them all together. It's amazing how resourceful people have been in seeking out opportunities to come and work on farms.
I don't know about Rick and Will. I'm sure Andrew's already heard of it, but what a great branding title, Pick for Britain. That's just fantastic. So if we can get the Daily Mail onto that, as I'm sure they will do, that's just going to roll. But Jack, as he said about this, the timing element, that there was this initial flurry of information that the mainstream media picked up, and when I followed some of the links through to some of the labour providers and saw a message saying we're now full until May, but there was also no opportunity for someone to upload a CV or contact details. It just seemed to be defeating the object. But if there's going to be that let's got the mothership of Pick for Britain, that's going to be brilliant. And in our own little way, we'd love to help to promote that, publicise that, as and when you're ready to go.
Yeah, that's great. I do think we've got to manage expectations here because the season will stretch from now through to the end of October. We've got to make sure that we sustain that interest over a prolonged period. And as I say, we're not going to hit top gear in terms of the need for seasonal workers until probably mid-May and beyond. So, there is some way still to go.
Yeah, but there's been some fantastic examples of a British Airways pilot of a 747, and he's now a Tesco delivery driver, which is great for Tesco. But it'd be great if he was working on Beverly's farm or Andrew's farm, because that would be even better publicity. And guys, just on the pedantics of it, Beverly, on the basis that we're still going to be under these restrictions for the foreseeable, how's it going to work for people who do want to work but are worried about the social distancing and the accommodation elements? What are you guys doing about that? What are you thinking about that, please?
So social distancing, we've done lots and lots of thinking and planning around that area, because as you say, when you're harvesting the crops, it's quite difficult to make sure that everybody's at 2 metre distance. So of course we've got all the hygiene procedures and heightened hygiene procedures on top of what we would normally do. And then where we can, we've put in kind of separation screens that can be cleaned down in between shifts. But where it isn't possible to work at a 2 metre distance, then we're creating work groups so that people can live and work together like a family group, like you do with your family. So you would live together, work together, and you would have separate bathrooms and toilets so that you wouldn't then necessarily interact with another work group. So it's those sorts of things that we're thinking through. There's quite a lot of hierarchy of risk assessment.
Okay. But what do we do with smaller growers? So we had a lovely chap, Clive Williamson, of Maynard House Fruit Juicers, on from Suffolk, and his brother normally has 12 Eastern Europeans, and he's down to 2, and they've got a selection of caravans, but they're not. No offense to them, they're not as sophisticated as G's. And any thought as to what those smaller businesses can do, because there are obviously so many of them.
Well, I think it's things like thinking through the effectively the travel to work arrangements. So how do you transport those people from the caravans to the fields? Is there any way that they can go separately? Do they have to go together? Can you make sure that they're spread out? When it comes to where they're living, can you have fewer people in a caravan? Those sorts of things. But it's difficult. But there are lots of things that we can consider and think through. But we need to, each business really needs to, and they will be, thinking through their own risk assessment.
Okay, Rick, on a supply chain perspective, there's been talk prior to this all happening how there needs to be automation within the fresh food sectors. The ultimate being that automated robotic picker for raspberries, Handtronics. We can't. This is the most amazing thing, and technology hasn't got there. Do you think this is going to accelerate things? I
think partly. I mean, we always look to technology. I mean, what are we all doing here right now? We're adapting, aren't we? As Newton said, you know, we've got to change with our environment, and so I think times like these, the poignancy of lack of availability of labour or getting people on farms is bound to accelerate technological development. However, my view on this is, if you take a step back and in my short lifetime, this isn't new. This issue, you know, we've been over it times many with Brexit, but I look at the world and what it's become, and I think there's a real opportunity here to sort of redress the balance a little bit. So when I was a kid, you know, a teenager, a young guy, I was out on farms, picking taters, picking carrots, washing cars, doing things like this to earn money. And yet we look at society these days, and yeah, you know, 65,000 migrant workers come over every summer to do the picking. Well, we've got 1.5 million people unemployed in this country. You know, and actually, if you look at the ONS statistics, it's actually more like 4.5 million if you count those that are economically inactive. So actually, the availability of labour is there. It's the attraction of the industry to get people to want to do it. And the speakers you've got on here know more about it than me. But we've got to make this more attractive to our own kids. And I'd start there.
Rick, there's a really good point just been dialed in by Alexandra Bell, and they say that it's great that we have all these schemes, but if we come out of lockdown and people go back to their original jobs, how do we foresee the staffing issue unfolding? As I just said to Beverly, 5 weeks ago we had this big immigration issue. When we're out of this, is the government just going to revert back to type, even more so, to say that we've done it once, we'll just get the UK population to pick it again?
But should we be looking at the government? We need to look at ourselves, don't we? We're all private businesses here. Yes, you know, as I said, some of the situation was already here before. So, if you look at the numbers, you know, what in effect we need is 4.3% of the unemployed to work back on the farms again.
Yeah.
You know, and as an industry, as a food industry, if we can't attract that generation of less than 5% of the unemployed to want to do this, then I'm afraid, yes, we are looking at immigration again, because there's no other choice.
Yeah. So Andrew, just coming to you, because we picked up with some other folk that they're concerned that they're worried about the UK population coming onto farms or business and not having the work rate of the Eastern Europeans, to the point of one large grower in the south has requested through their contacts through the NFU that the government scrap minimum wage and it just goes straight to piece rate with no tax, and people get paid at the end of a row with a contactless card, and so they get paid for what they do. Andrew, do you think there's going to be an issue in the comparison of the ability to work of Eastern Europeans and overseas in comparison to the UK population coming in as newbies?
Well, obviously, UK people coming back onto farms is something that hasn't happened in any great number for quite a long time. So there's going to be a bit of reconditioning. When I was a lad, as Rick said, we did all of our work with local people. And actually, we were less mechanised then. We were more labour intensive than we are now. So, necessity being the mother of invention. we should be able to get back to some reasonable level of work. But I do think that this crisis has highlighted the importance of UK food security. And I think labour availability is a key part of that. The government are listening now. They weren't 4 or 5 weeks ago, but they are now. And I think we have to, make sure we've got enough labour available. The government's job is to do that, whether it's from immigration or from UK work sources. I think we're starting to realise the true value of food, and I think it's higher than the price we've been paying. So that should come into government thinking. And I think encouragement through tax relief or grant aid of mechanisation, I think will be jumping up the agenda. And I think things will move along a lot faster than they have been. Some of these jobs that we do are very, very difficult to mechanise, and they're going to take a lot of technology to do. I use it unskilled. These jobs are not unskilled. They are extremely dexterous jobs.
Yep.
When I watch some of the guys cutting and stripping leeks in the field, for instance, the speed they can do it is just unbelievable. That is skilled work. I challenge anybody with a degree or anything to go and match those guys. So, you know, it's going to take a lot of work to mechanise some of these jobs. And some of the sectors are quite small. You're not going to sell many machines. So it's going to be a difficult one.
And also with if you're a developer and you've got the opportunity to go and arm up the US government with drones and get paid a gazillion to do that, or make a robot picker to pick leaks and Spalding, what are you going to go for as well? A really good point from Tim Crossman that I'm just going to fire over to Jack. Jack, with this call that you're going to have at 4 o'clock with the likes of the NFU, I know you guys are doing such a fantastic job at the moment, but also trying to look at it long term, looking through the fog. Tim Crossman makes a really good point of, do you think that we've been presented with a wonderful opportunity to promote horticulture to a young generation? So that if we've got these people in and they learn and they appreciate how great it is to work in this amazing sector, rather than sat in an office, faceless office, flogging insurances to someone, there's an opportunity there to get them now and for the future. So is there thinking with the conversations that you're having with your other affiliated bodies to try and capture these people for the long term?
Yeah, I think so. I made this point to somebody else last week in an interview, so that actually this is a real opportunity for people to rediscover what it would be like working on a farm, because I think there's probably been negative press over the years about what it could be like. But this is a new opportunity for people to get out there and try it, and just appreciate some of the benefits of being outside, working as part of a team, being involved with the harvest. It is actually quite exciting work, knowing that you're bringing in the food to feed the nation.
Well, let's ask Will. Will is by far the youngest and the most handsome out of all of us men here, to just speak for myself. Will, you're 5th generation. Why the hell are you in this industry?
Well, we were born into it. We grew up on markets like everybody here, worked from a young age in the industry, and I agree with what everybody's saying here. I think there's a real good opportunity to get positive PR in horticulture and food service. Let's take an example of the guys on the NHS care workers at the moment. Fantastic jobs, all on the front line, and deservedly so, the gratitude they're getting from the nation is there. But I feel that should be also reciprocated to anybody who services the country by feeding. So picking for Britain, you truly are working in the service industry. You're servicing the nation by feeding them. I feel like if that was, and I believe that everybody's mission here will be the same, is to try and promote that. And like everyone says, the opportunity is there to really breathe some new life and some young, new, innovative ideas there. So there is definitely positive.
Well done. We mentioned, we must have mentioned it 30 times in the last webinar, this word reset, that there's this huge opportunity for everyone in the fresh food sectors. on what I was saying earlier about how the retailers potentially are going to have to slim down the offering to the consumer, because the consumer can't afford the frivolous things that they were used to, and they just got to get down to stock items. The stock items that the fresh food sectors, that the likes of Andrew and Beverly and Jack's membership grow. And Andrew, really interesting question just in organics. What do you think is going to change with organics? We've had some amazing silly examples that the likes of Holland and Barrett have sold out of vitamin C tablets because people think they need to consume that to not get COVID-19, where they could just actually eat a citrus, some form of citrus, and the box schemes. Boom, thank you. And the box schemes are doing very, very well because people have got it cottoned on, rightly so, that it's fresh food that's going to give them even more protection from COVID-19. With your organic expertise, and Beverly also with your organic unit as well, and Andrew with organics, can you see that there's going to be a marked rise in demand in the short and the long term?
I think there's pluses and minuses as to what's happening with organic at the moment. I think the health food agenda will be a plus. I think there's a couple of negatives. One is it's far more labour intensive, and hand weeding is a far less attractive job than cutting lettuces even. So that could be a challenge. And I think if we have a really deep economic recession, the cost difference could become important. Although I have to say, with the mechanisation that we've got, the cost difference has never been closer than it is right now between conventional and organic.
Okay, Beverly, views on your organics within G's?
Well, we agree actually with Andrew, but I think what will be important is that people return to eating fresh food and fresh produce. So if they're not eating out of the home and they're eating fresh produce, then all the businesses that we've got around here should surely benefit from that. And we've seen a return to scratch cooking. So there's certainly a high demand for products like onions that is a higher demand than some of our other product areas. Okay.
And Jack, we seem to be potentially in such a positive spot here that if we can encourage the population within the UK to do more scratch cooking, to eat more fresh produce, then surely we're going to be in a very good spot, and your members are going to be in a very good spot.
Absolutely, yeah. I think even before this present crisis, we were seeing a quite a big move towards eating more fresh vegetables and more fresh fruit and making it a much bigger part of the diet. As you know, we've been working very closely with the Veg Power campaign, and they've been running the promotion with ITV, and we're talking to them about how we can keep that going. And just on that point, I think we are looking for more grower support to help with that campaign. But I think there is a real movement around eating more fresh produce. And given all the things that we've got going for us, if we can't raise the bar on this one now, then I don't think we ever will.
Okay, but with the Veg Power campaign, I could double the attraction rate by the stroke of a pen by including fruit, and treble it by including Andrew's potatoes. There seemed to be this complete naivety of not including fruit, because the quote that was given back to me was that children were eating enough fruit already. But to me, the Veg Power campaign, I think it's great what they've done and what collateral they've already gained. But it was like trying to sell a car without the wheels on, not having fruit on there. We've got some amazing sponsors of us, the likes of AC go through some of the best fruit producers and growers in the whole of the UK. But not to have fruit as part of that campaign just seemed shocking. And if they are going to go to the next step, they really need to include fruit and potatoes.
Yeah, I think, that was the subject of long and arduous debate within the Veg campaign, and they've decided to stick with the difficult to do. And there is a reason. I think they were very anxious that the campaign included vegetables, and it wasn't, all about obvious pieces of fruit. It's been a difficult decision, and they have been in discussions with the apple sector and with the berry sector about how we could marry these things together. But I think credit to you, they have stuck to do, because vegetables are, a very important part of the diet. It's much easier to persuade people to eat fruit than it is to eat vegetables.
I suppose it comes back to the conversation we were just having about the proposed job site, that if there's been a union, a coming together of minds to create that, when we get to the other end of this and there is a reset, to have one global campaign for the fresh food sector, rather than just one for berries, one for veg, one for fruit, everyone come together as one team, would put us all in a better position.
Yeah, I would disagree, but over time it's been more difficult to persuade people to eat vegetables than it has to persuade them to eat some fruits.
Yep, got it. So Beverly, just our next webinar is going to be what this whole thing looks like 18 months out, with the shape and size of the G's business, and you've always been very fleet of foot, whether it be in the UK or on an international perspective. Where can you see the likes of the G's group? Because we all look at you as an exemplar within the fresh produce sector. Where can you see the likes of the G's group being 18 months, 2 years down the line?
Well, I think kind of the area that I'm probably most experienced in is around the people agenda. And right now, we can probably see somewhere like a third of people coming from Eastern Europe, a third of people through agencies, and a third of people coming from the student arena or local people. And I'm really hopeful that some good will come of it, and that those people that are locals, students, will then want to have a career, and therefore we'll see a greater mix as we go forward. But I think we do need to recognise that in all of this, to get through the next year, the costs of production are going to soar, because we're going to have to put in extra training, extra management, extra safeguarding for the social distancing, whether that be more buses, whether that be more caravans, all those sorts of things. So I think it's going to be really important to help businesses get through this stage, so that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel and potentially have that reshape where we've got more British local people working in our sector that we know has got amazing opportunities.
Okay, so I'm going to put words in your mouth. I'm slightly leading the witness here, on the basis that your costs are going to go up because you need to train these people. You need that expertise. The fresh food sectors receive appalling margins from the retail sector in comparison to other FMCG products. You, Beverly, you need to be paid more. Andrew, you need to be paid more. Jack, all of your growers need to be paid more. Will, all your business and all your common colleagues within the wholesale sector need to be paid more. So what I'm learning from this is that you guys are going to, through Jack and his affiliated organisations, are going to create this mothership of a website to get people in on a labour perspective. The likes of Beverly and her team are going to train up these people for the good. But you need to be paid more. Working on margins that are so wafer thin is ridiculous. So how do we persuade the retailers to understand that for us to feed the nation on an ongoing basis, and with the retailers consolidating their product line, you need to be paid more? Jack, how do we do that? How do we wave this magic wand at the retailers to get them to pay your membership more?
Okay, I think there's got to be a public debate about the true cost of food. And it was one of the points that it was a main point we made to Henry Dimbleby in his call for evidence in the food strategy. And we said to him,
Jack, can you just give a bit of information to what Henry's doing, because for the students and some of the overseas guests? Thank you.
Yes. Last year, the government decided that they would invite Henry Dimbleby, who's the founder of a restaurant chain called Leon, to look at a whole range of issues relating to the food industry. I think, there was a view that our food system isn't working. When you look at the number of people who are suffering from heart disease and diabetes, you've got to conclude that we're just eating the wrong things, and the food system is not delivering the sort of healthy nation that we require. And so they've charged Henry Dimbleby with looking at the whole system and trying to come out with some recommendations. And he asked for evidence last summer. And I think the point I was trying to make was that where we're at with the current system, as you say, that margins are so slim, there's very little room for manoeuvre, there's very little room for reinvestment, and yet there's a massive expectation by society of what the food system is going to deliver. We haven't touched on sustainability in this call. But over time, there's going to be a massive sustainability agenda that we've got to take into account. We cannot do it on the sort of margins that are being discussed at the moment. And what we're effectively doing is externalizing a lot of those costs. We're hiding them, we're shielding consumers away from them. And if we're going to have a truly sustainable food system that ticks every boxes, that meets the expectation of Extinction Rebellion, etc., then the reality is we're going to have to pay a bit more for our food.
Okay, because there's a whole issue about food inflation. There has been no food inflation for the last 20 odd years, and because Rick, have you finished?
No, I'm sorry. I was just showing you my food is too cheap.
Okay. Let me just finish my diatribe and we'll move on to you. And that's for the last 20 years there hasn't been any noticeable food inflation, when there's needed to be. So go on, Rick, over to you.
Well, I was just going to say I can only echo everything Jack's saying. I mean, I think if you take a top-down view of what's happening here, we're all out there clapping on a Wednesday evening for the NHS and for nurses, and the debate's moving on to they're vastly underpaid, and who would object as a taxpayer to paying them more? Well, in the round, we should be looking at this. Food is far too cheap. It's less than, if you take food service out of the equation, it's 8% of our earnings. Whereas we all know back in 57 it was a third. So it's got far too cheap, and we're all under pressure, and therefore that manifests in cheap labour, modern slavery, all the kind of things we're all trying to do to try and eke a margin. And maybe this is the step change moment of saying, well, hold on a minute, now is the time. We've got some support from the shoppers, from the population and consumers who've had the time themselves to stop and think about the values. I think, hey, do you know what? Maybe this is worth more than 20p. Let's seize the moment.
There's a contact of mine 6 months ago. He went to Texas and he met a number of salad producers there, and he was aghast at the amount of margin that that they were gaining, those salad producers into the retailers. And when he asked them, "How come you're getting such margin?" The response was, "You've got to be Texas tough. If they're not prepared to pay for our product, we won't sell it to them." Beverly, is there a time coming up with everything that's going on? It feels like a perfect storm to our advantage, that when we get through this and you guys show your mettle, show what you can do, that you then say to the retailer, instead of the other way around, that actually, Mr. Retailer, we need more because we need to invest to make this even better for your consumers.
Well, I think there's a recognition that this is taking place, and as Jack says, if we can get the public debate going, that would be great. But I do think the retailers know what's going on. They're connected with us, so they understand it. Now, I'm not saying what the outcome is going to be, and then I can't claim the credit for this phrase, and I don't know who to mention, because I can't remember where I got it from. But it's about eat for Britain as well as pick for Britain, because we want people to eat and work in our sector, so that we can be paid more for the products that we produce.
Understood. Susan, Susan, just to finish this one. Susan's just dialed in and said the retailers are needed on these webinars so that they can hear the price problem for more than just one supplier at a time. We've invited lots of retailers on here. Trust me, they're watching, they're listening, because we can see who's on here. So please, Mrs. Retailer, if you'd like to get involved online, we'd love to have you on board. But please notice these comments. Sorry, I cut across someone then. I wasn't sure who it was.
Thanks. It's Andrew. I just wanted to say, if you're taking you right back to your opening, if you're in a household that has less than £1,000 of savings and you've lost your job, you are not going to vote with your wallet for cheaper food. As an industry, I agree with everything we've just said. Food is too cheap, it's undervalued. But you've got to move millions of consumers to agreeing with that statement. As an industry, we must understand our true costs. And we must understand the strategic costs that are involved in developing our businesses further, automating them, making them more sustainable. And those things need to be costed into tenders, and they need to be pointed out to the retailers, who need to take a more strategic view of their securing their food security for the future. They need to factor in sustainability and investment and development of new technology. into their pricing. But first of all, we as an industry must understand our own costs and represent them properly to our customers.
Okay, and Andrew, I'm going to give this example that I've given so often. Half a dozen bananas in Asda before this all kicked off, 89p from Ecuador. If you went to Ecuador, they're more expensive to buy. It just shows how cheap food is, let alone the likes of your produce. And that bit about I get it that the consumer wants to buy cheap food, but you all know too many examples of kids who are going hungry whilst their parents are rolling around in 30-40 grand BMWs all on tick, because and all the money's going on payments of that, or lavish holidays that they perhaps can't afford. And again, using that word that we've been using before about the potential reset that's coming. It's fascinating, this conversation, because it could just see that if this is all guided correctly by the likes of Jack and the other affiliated organisations and Beverly, that we could see a real sea change to the benefit here of the UK populace in health and fresh food wise, and to the benefits of the growers.
Max, can I just chip in?
Right away, sir.
Max, just one thing that we need to bear in mind, that some of the costs of our cheap food policy have ended up at the door of the health service.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are now, as taxpayers and consumers, paying a very substantial price for the cost of, food which hasn't really supported the health of the nation. And that's quite an important consideration, is that, we are looking at people's health. And we're not the healthiest of nations, and a lot of that starts with what we eat. So, whilst I absolutely get Andrew's point about, people not being able to afford the cost, I think as a country, we've got to ask ourselves, can we afford the cost of an unhealthy nation as well?
Yeah, and I've like all you guys, I've done, when I did my Africa trip, I came back and I did close on to 50 school presentations, and the best one and the worst one was one I did in Huntingdon, where at the end of my presentation with my motorbike, I had Pink Lady, Apple's very kindly sponsored us, and I gave a Pink Lady apple to every kid that's at the end of the presentation, and there was a kid aged 10, I'm going to go for Arthur, and he refused this apple, so I put him to one side because I thought there's something curious, and then at the end of it, got Arthur to come up to me with the teacher, and I asked this kid, why would you not have an apple? Why would you not have this Pink Lady apple? And he was very embarrassed to say, at the age of 10, he'd never eaten an apple. And this is Huntingdon. So we opened up this Pink Lady apple. He at the segment really enjoyed it. We found from the school his parents' address, and we got carted up a carton of Pink Lady apples. And the parents then wrote to the headmaster to thank asked for what we did, because the mum knew that she was cooking badly for the kids but didn't know how to break out of it, but now they were going to do it. So again, it comes back down to margin. Beverly and great colleague Anthony and I have always had this conversation about the lack of money within the sector to allow brands to allow marketing, whilst in comparison the likes of Red Bull was making, and Anthony know better than I, 40% margin, so hence why they can have 2 Formula 1 teams and so on and so forth. Again, it comes back to that thing again about money, but also that political and social awareness that fresh food is fantastic. We just need to get that message out. So guys, we're running out of time. If it's okay, can I just run round all of you to give your views as to how you think our sector can better themselves in this situation and be fit, ready for the next year, 18 months. Well, let's start with you, with the great technology that you've created and your 5 generations of experience. What's your advice to everyone, please?
Bit difficult to give advice to all these experts, but I'll just say, listen, we are in difficult times, but I agree with everybody in all their views here. Fresh produce does need to be more valued, and it needs more information. What I'm seeing from the consumer, rather than anybody else, is a demand on provenance, on what they're eating and where it's coming from. So I think as an industry, if we start to streamline the information and get that to the consumer about what they're eating, where it's come from, how to cook it, I think there's a big opportunity there to enhance the relationship to fresh produce. So it could be a good opportunity in the next 18 months to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Andrew, over to you.
It's invest from me. Invest in our people. in their skills, in their welfare and in their working conditions. Let's make this a more attractive industry to want to work in. It's invest in telling our story, the frustration of own label, when we've got brilliant stories about our farms and what happens in the countryside and we just can't tell them. So invest in that. We need permission to do that from our customers. And invest in technology and make us a more efficient industry. So it's invest, invest, invest from me.
Well done, Andrew. Rick?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly echo everything that Will and Andrew have just said. I think for me, it's keeping a focus and to not lose the momentum of what this can hopefully give to us. The economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment, simple as that. And if we don't look after our environment, and COVID's a great example of that, we're living it right now. So, I think it's really carpe diem, seize the day. Let's keep, as an industry, let's seize this moment.
Love it. Thank you. Jack?
From an advocacy point of view, just picking up on the comments that are behind Rick, and Tim Lunig, how quickly we've gone from being not needed to being working. So, from an advocacy and trying to make sure that people recognise the importance of the food industry, we now have a fantastic opportunity in front of us.
Excellent. And Beverly, come on.
Well, I think some of the decisions that we make around the way we treat our colleagues during these challenging times, the way we treat the people that are attracted to come and work into our sector will be remembered for a long time to come and will hopefully stand us in good stead for the future.
Beverly, well done. And guys, just to wrap up, we've got a very nice email from Sarah, Operations Director at Hops Labour Solutions, and she wanted to listen in, but she's got a clash with the NFU call, probably the call that Jack's going to be having later. And she just wanted to point out that over and above everything else we've talked about, they have 26,000 UK applicants registered, and they want to support farms who need them. All these applicants are screened, GLA registered, and they, as we all know, that Hops have got over 30 years experience in the sector. So we're going to, Jack, if you can keep us completely briefed on your conversations with the likes of the NFU, because in our little way we'd love to publicise what you're looking to do, so it's going to be the benefit of everyone. And guys, just so you're aware that the next webinar is going to be on Tuesday the 14th of April. I sound like a scoutmaster. Tuesday the 14th of April at 3 p.m. And it's going to be as interesting as this one. We're trying to look at what the food landscape is going to look like 12 months, 18 months out. We've managed to garner Christine Take-on, Grocery Code Adjudicator, Sean Brown, who's the co-head of corporate finance for Houlihan Lokey, Sarah Colcutt from the British Apples and Pears, Sterling Crew, who's the chairman of the Food Network Association, and Ben Mlasky, who's the area director in Lloyd's for the Eastern region. So we've got a really good lineup there, trying to look at the crystal ball to see what it's going to look like in the future. Can I just thank everyone for this? We've had some amazing comments in from people saying this has been the best webinar yet. It's probably because Will is just too damn young and handsome in comparison to the rest of our men. But then it comes over to Beverly. So can I just thank every one of you for listening, all of you students especially listening, everyone who's doing catch up. Be safe, let's keep washing our hands. I think the future is going to be bright on the back of my slightly negative introduction. Got a lot of hard work, a lot of fighting to be done, but well done everyone. Keep up the good work. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.